Welcome to the September edition of the Linkerd community meeting. Looking forward to a great program this wonderful Wednesday morning. We're going to be talking a little bit about Linkerd 2.9. We're going to talk a little bit about a new program we've got called the Community Anchor Program. I'm super excited about. Charles will be telling us a little bit about that in a minute or two. And then we have two presentations. The first one is from Matej on the service topology work that he did over the summer. Really excited to hear everything there. And then Mike is going to be talking with us about conformance validation and why that is important. Another one I'm super excited about. And then we're going to have our normal Linkerd heroes and QA time. So please prepare for those. If you've got a hero you'd like to nominate, think about it. We'll get to that at the end of the show. And then hopefully someone will stump Oliver because he needs to be stumped today. Mostly because I like to pick on Oliver. And with that, why don't I walk into Linkerd 2.9 updates? So Oliver, I'm not going to stump you on this one, but tell us a little bit about what's happened in the 2.9.
So we've been, as probably I've mentioned the last few times, we've been hard at work on the proxy changes needed for TCP MTLS. The good news is those landed, I think, in, if not last week's Edge, maybe 2 weeks ago, but they've been in Edge for the last couple weeks, and we've already had some good bug reports related to some of the changes around that. So really appreciative that we're getting the burn-in testing from y'all on the edges, because that's the only way we can actually get to a stable release in any reasonable time frame. So that's all going well. And on the proxy side, we continue to right now, we're in the process of adding traffic split for TCP traffic as well. So the same traffic split resources you can use today for HTTP resources will work with non-HTTP resources. And I'm in the process of trying to take as much of the work the proxy does in our per request out of the request path and move that onto the connection path. So now that we have the ability to do discovery for TCP endpoints, we can actually use that to bootstrap most of the discovery that we need for arbitrary HTTP things as well. And so we're really focused on refactoring a bunch of the caching. So hopefully we get some big performance from out of this. We haven't gotten to those benchmarks yet, but I'm really eager to do that over the next week or two. But the other things that Alex and Tarun have been working on are kind of splitting up the moving towards what we call the minimal control plane. And so we want there to be an option where you can have a really minimized Linkerd install footprint without any of the viz things. Those can be purely added after the fact. What you need to get started is basically the proxy injector, the destination controller, and the identity controller. And that's about it. And so we're really focused on trying to give you a really slimmed down version of Linkerd. We're figuring out exactly, that all works today if you know how to configure it, but we're still figuring out exactly how it's going to fit to 2.9. But I think we're almost totally feature complete for 2.9. We're now in the process of polishing and testing and benchmarking. So now is a great time to get your staging clusters upgraded and giving us feedback.
Oliver, is the work that Kevin is working on around server speaks first protocol stuff planned to land in 2.9?
I don't expect it to. I think we want to kind of make sure we land the pure TCP changes and get a stable 2.9 out without that. And then we're working on doing server first annotations, server speak first protocol annotations and discovery so that we'll be able to do MTLS for MySQL, SMTP, any of the non-benign protocols. And that will also enable us to change how the gateways work so we can do TCP gateways for multi-cluster. But I think that's probably going to be more in the 2.10 timeframe at this point, just from the getting something stable out for y'all to use without having to wait for that.
Yeah, so to give folks a little bit of clarity on what's going on there, while we've landed TCP MTLS, we still need to do protocol detection. And for protocols that are server speaks first, we can't do protocol detection because there's no way to detect the protocol. We just sit there and wait indefinitely. And so a protocol like MySQL, you still won't be able to do MTLS on in 2.9, it sounds like, because we won't have the ability to skip protocol detection. But that is in
It's actually slightly, it's not because we have to do protocol detection, but it's because we have to know whether we can just send the traffic or MTLS it. So it's really about, we're gonna have to redirect traffic and add extra things into the TCP prefix to support this. And so we don't wanna have to add all that stuff in, which is planned and scoped, and I think we have the RFC basically finished for that. But yeah. Yeah, we've done a lot of work in terms of making the proxy do as much early on. We've got all the things set up so that we can do server first detection that's working on a branch, but we don't want to get the new protocol handshaking stuff involved yet.
I do like making small changes more than large changes. Oliver, could you explain a little bit about why that matters for multi-cluster?
Yeah, so when you're sending traffic between clusters, we go through a gateway. And if we just send a TCP connection to the gateway, it has no idea where that thing's supposed to go. And so what we do in the HTTP case is we do DNS resolution and do service discovery on the HTTP headers so that we can know, okay, this is actually going to this service, which is these pods in that cluster. We don't have any means to set that target address in TCP. So what we have to do is add a little, probably a protobuf prefix onto the TCP stream that says, here's actually the service name I'm trying to contact. And based on that, we can do the discovery and load balancing that we need to do inside the other cluster.
Cool. Since 2.9 has been ongoing here since, I think, June. This summer has blown by. I think staying inside a small room makes me forget how anything is happening. We've got, so the service topology stuff that Matei is going to be covering is going to be in 2.9, should be tested now. Please go play around with that. The conformance validation stuff that we're going to be hearing about again later today will be in there. And the two hot topic issues that I know that I've heard from a lot of community members will also be there. One of them is all of the fantastic Helm chart updates to allow cert rotation and kind of normalization around the webhooks, as well as the actual issuer and trust anchor certs. And we found some very unique, I'm going to call them edge cases, in how Kubernetes handles services themselves. So if you go and kill nodes into 8, there are some potential issues where you'll get downtime, and those have all been fixed up will be part of the 2.9 release. And so if you are super interested in anything HA related, we'd love for you to test those out in the latest edge, and we'll be landing in stable as part of 2.9. Oh, I need to take notes on that. I'll fill that in. Charles, can you tell us a little bit about the Linkerd Community Anchor Program?
Yeah, for sure. So this is something that we've been working on internally. We've got a new addition to our team here, and she's just been very enthusiastic about getting this program out that we've been talking about for a little while. And so the Community Anchor Program is, it's a way for individuals who are interested in working with Linkerd and becoming a part of the community. And I have to go into why we call it an anchor. Again, we're trying to come up with a few different names, and we landed on anchor because of course, the nautical theme. We have to stick with buoyant and everything ocean and watery, but also because our anchors are the folks who are like, keep us grounded. They keep us solid. So if you think of a big ship sitting out, I live here in San Francisco. I can see some ships out in the bay on a regular basis, and those are being held down by anchors. And so I see Linkerd and as being this big open source moving project, and it's our anchors that keep us grounded and that keep us really solid, and to help other folks come onto the ship, come on board and be part of it. And so just looking around this grid of folks that I see in the call right now, you know, I see a few folks that I would easily nominate and be happy to have become anchors for Linkerd. And so I won't put anybody on the spot, but you know, if you're interested in becoming a Linkerd community anchor, I'm going to drop the link into Slack right now to sign up, and the benefits are on there as well. So really, you become a recognized expert in Linkerd. you will be able to tell your story in any medium that you want. So if you've already got a blog somewhere that you're doing, like Medium or dev.to or to, or even YouTube, something like that, you can continue to post your content there, and we'll help you write it. We will help you submit talks if you've got something interesting, if you want to present at an event, a virtual event, or when we get them again, real life events. And I have it on good authority that community anchors get these awesome Linkerd hats. So, you know, if you have one, 2 is always better, right? So have a look at that. And I think that covers everything. Did I miss anything, Thomas?
No, I think that sounds about right. I'm going to say that being a social influencer is a lot of work, and Kim Kardashian makes it look easy, but and so does Charles, to be honest. But I have a tough time with it, and so Community Anchor is all about us just trying to help folks chat about the awesome stories that you've got around Linkerd. Everyone's doing something awesome with it, and we want to help out there as much as possible.
Yeah, you don't have to write code that gets into our main repo to be part of Linkerd community. So if you're doing talks or integrations or documentation, all of that's making the community much better. So keep it up.
Also, if you're not doing any of that today and just want help with it, we can go and help. I will go out of my way to say that Charles is an amazing speaking coach. If you are interested in going and doing meetups and getting your story out there, this is the way to go and get a bunch of help and learn how to do it. It's a great way to get started on it, and it's a great way to keep going, and we'd love to help out however we can.
Yeah, and that's high praise, Thomas. Thank you very much. And just to add one more piece on there, yeah, if you're not contributing code, but you've done a really cool integration with Linkerd, and you just did it out of part of your work, and you think it would be useful, or even if you haven't considered that it might be useful, I've found in my experience that there's usually somebody who is trying to solve the same problems that you are and would love to know how you did it. So yeah, have a look at that if you're interested, and I will be here to help you. We all will, but yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Charles. Okay, up next, we've got Matei to talk to us a little bit about service topologies. So let me figure out how to unmute you, Matei. Okay, should be good.
Can you hear me? All right, awesome. Hi, everyone. Super excited to be here and super excited to present to you all. Let me see if I can share my screen. I should be able to. So yeah, my name is Matei, just as a bit of a background. Now you should all be able to see my screen. I've got a quick slide deck for you all just to help you with some visuals. So topology aware service routing was my project as part of the Community Bridge program for CNCF. And for those of you that don't know, this is a program aimed to help people get into open source. So as part of this whole program, I had to write an RFC up and then implement everything over the course of 2 to 3 months. So for the purpose of this presentation, I want to talk a bit about what service topology is in Kubernetes, how we are doing it in Linkerd, and then we're just going to wrap up. Hopefully this should all take 10 minutes max. So what is service topology? According to the official docs, it enables a service to route traffic based on the node topology of a cluster. And what that means is, given a specific locality for your endpoints, you can choose where your destination endpoints are going to be, respective to the source of your traffic. Service topology is quite an easy concept to wrap your head around. They use a lot of buzzwords in the official documentation. So there are 2 main facilitators to this. There's the topology labels, and there's the endpoint slices. That's a new networking enhancement. So I'm going to be talking about the topology labels first. Every node in Kubernetes has a concept of topology labels. This helps us identify the location of a node. So I've got a bit of a visual diagram here with a node called node. The host name is node. It's in Europe West 1 as a zone, and it's in Europe West as a region. So all of these labels help us do service topology, just as the name implies. And the free labels are used as part of your service spec definition in order to, let's say, filter the destination endpoints. So this is how topology labels help us. And up next, I want to talk a bit about endpoint slices, which is a feature that I was very excited to implement. And I know Thomas, as my mentor, was very excited about it too. He's been talking about it for the past 2 to 3 months in the meetups. So normally, I'm not going to assume any prior knowledge here. Every service in Kubernetes has an endpoints object that groups all of the IP and port combinations that back that service up. It turns out there were a couple of scalability concerns because this object can grow indefinitely, and depending on how many pods you have, it's harder to read and write it. So they decided to split everything up. They decided to slice it up into different objects that are called endpoint slices. So apart from addressing those scalability concerns, this also has the benefit of including some extra bells and whistles, such as support for dual stack addresses. And very important to service topology, they allow a pod now to have topology labels. So every endpoint has its own topology now. You don't have to go and look for those separately. So to give you a quick example, in case I'm rambling too much, I have another diagram, and on the top part, we can see that without service topology, if we have a service A and a service B, service A will just pick randomly a pod from service B to talk to. With service topology, on the bottom half of the diagram, we can impose a node local topology filter, and then service A will only talk to the service B pod that's on the same node. So this is in essence what service topology allows you to do. This all came about because historically speaking, kubeproxy only routed to random pods that were backing the service. And certain Kubernetes contributors wanted more control over it. They wanted to choose locations that are closer to the source of the traffic. Cool. So how do I do this in Linkerd? Well, it's exactly the same as without Linkerd. So this is one of the things that I came to learn as a contributor. In Linkerd, the maintaining team loves to keep everything native, and they love to use native resources. So this is exactly something that I wanted to do as well when I implemented this. There's no added configuration. All you have to do is just use it as you normally would in Kubernetes, which begs the following question: how do you do it in Kubernetes? So you have some prerequisites to this. You need to have a version that's higher than 117, and you need to have some feature gates activated, service topology and endpoint slices. And then for a given service manifest, you just add the topology keys field to it, and then you add the labels that I mentioned previously. And that will just help you filter out your traffic. So the second step of this whole presentation is to talk about what I did specifically. There are 2 goals that I personally have for this presentation. One is to help people understand what has been done, and the second is to help people use this feature. So I want people to understand what has been done because I'm excited where this can lead. More about the feature itself. I'm excited about the possibilities and the work that can be piggybacked on this. So looking at the discovery service from a very, very high level overview, there are 4 steps to it that I identified. The first one, the Linkerd 2 proxy makes a destination GET call. It adds some contextual information and the host name for the destination endpoints that it wants to receive. The destination service picks this up, and then it uses 2, let's call them subcomponents to handle all of this processing. First, we have an endpoints watcher, which helps us subscribe on a given host name for a particular proxy. So this subscription simply says, okay, I want for this particular service all of the endpoints that you have. The endpoints watcher has another responsibility, and that's to watch endpoints. It's very suggestive. People have done a great job at naming everything around the project. So the endpoints watcher watches everything from the API server, and it caches certain resources. So for example, services and endpoints objects are cached locally. And then when a subscription comes through, it sends everything to the second component, the endpoints translator, which translates those into a different format that the proxy can understand. All of these different endpoints and all of these updates are then streamed back to the proxy. So it's always up to date with what's happening in the cluster. So Oh, that's how it all works. But what has been done? So I included a picture at the bottom with all of the PRs that I've done. You can see that the one at the bottom has 90 comments. Thank you, Alex, if you're on the call for 80 of those. So there's 3 other things that have been done to implement this. First, we had to put in the endpoint slice support. We added a CLI flag as a user experience thing to be able to use this. This was arguably one of the lengthier and meatier parts of the project. We added more context to the requests. So previously I mentioned that the proxy sends some contextual information. We added the source of the traffic here, so the node name, to be able to tell where the traffic originates from and be able to apply this filtering logic. And finally, the actual filtering logic to be able to do service topology. Oh. Challenges are something that I wanted to bring up again because I was told during the dry run that people are interested in this. So this was quite challenging, actually. I'm very lucky that I had a lot of support with this. First off, I found out that Kubernetes feature gates are very, very painful to deal with. So this is in part because there is no programmatic way to be able to tell whether a feature gate is turned on. So we had to find some hacky ways to do this. Luckily, in the end, we decided on doing some cluster checks to see if the resource actually exists in the cluster, as well as the CLI flag to add to the user experience. Another challenge that I personally had was that the contextual data was hard to propagate. So it was very hard to add all of this contextual data without altering any of the components or without giving other components a notion of what's going on. Filtering also implied that we need to keep track of what's going on. So there were a couple of edge cases that needed to be considered when we actually did the filtering logic. So in order to do this, we had to change the endpoint translator to keep track of the state, the previous snapshot of the filtered endpoints, as well as the total number of endpoints that we have at a particular time to allow for different concepts such as fallback. And the last challenge that I put on here is after 10 pages into my Google search results about service topology in Kubernetes, there was nothing. So there were only 2 blog posts about it and the official Kubernetes enhancement proposal. And that's because Linkerd is one of the first projects. I'm not sure if this is still true. I haven't checked in 3 months, 4 months, but it was the first project to actually bring endpoint slice support and use service topology actively. So this was quite big for me because up until now as a junior programmer, I was always just quickly typing on Google, just searching for everything. And having to come up with everything was a very formative step for me, both in terms of learning how to research things better and learning how to get creative. And also the added advantages now that I can boast that I've done endpoint slices for the first time and I can write articles for other people. So to conclude, because I think I'm going to hit the 10-minute mark soon, service topology is cool. It lets you route traffic based on the location of your endpoints. It's supported in the same way that kubeproxy would use it, with the added benefit that Linkerd 2 proxy runs much better and does not randomly select your endpoints. And it comes with support for endpoint slices, which will hopefully lead to some even cooler features in the future. Now, I haven't actually had time to do a demo. I've been pretty tight on time, but I did make a GIST that has a short walkthrough on how you can test this out with Linkerd. And then I also included some links for everyone to go through, including the original PRs, the RFC, the proposal for service topology, and the docs. So I'm going to post the deck in Slack shortly after the meeting, and hopefully you can go through these at your own time. So this is the end. Thank you to the team, and thank you all for listening. If you want to keep up with me, you can either do it on Twitter, GitHub, LinkedIn. I've included anything. You can also just ping me on Slack. I'm usually around in the European time zone. But before I conclude, I want to say thank you again, primarily to Alex and Thomas. Thomas, you've been an amazing mentor. Thank you so much for all of the support that you've given me throughout those 3 to 4 months. I really can't overstate how cool you've been and how much you inspired me personally. And Alex, the same goes with you, minus the mentor part. You were my partner in crime when it came to those reviews. And I came to learn a lot and really value a lot the work ethic that you put in and what it means to be very thorough in your review. So thank you both, and thank you the whole team. Boom, done. You can mute me now.
Ha. Well, no, not quite yet. The first thing I'd like to point out is that I did not pay Matej to say any of those things. So that's number one. Number two, please play around with the walkthrough. Again, we're coming up on the 2.9 release. It's super important that everybody goes through this so that we get a really solid, stable out instead of needing to go fix bugs afterwards. And then number three, my most interesting question for you, Matej. Almost always when I've done a project, there's been a bunch of work that I didn't get to that I wanted to do. So what did you want to, what would go next with all of this work? What's the cool thing that got left off the table?
So there are two things actually, now that you mention it. First is integration tests that I've been telling you for ages now that I will do. And Alex, I'm kind of excited about doing those integration tests, but then again, they're tests, so I'm being a bit lazy. And the second thing is user experience. I think there's a lot that can be done in terms of endpoint slices that tie in with user experience. And Linkerd is all about user experience at the end of the day. A lot of people that I've spoken to choose it because of this. So I'm very excited to see what else can be done with it. I'm going to try and play with it in my own time, but definitely if I had 1 or 2 more months as part of the Community Bridge program, I would have done more when it comes to the UX side of things.
That's awesome. It's really a good thing to call out too, and that this links back into the Anchor program, because I like to have all of the things connected. You don't need to code to contribute to the project. Helping out on user experience is massive. If there's something in Linkerd that's been bugging you a little bit, bringing up a better way to do it is insanely helpful to all of us. So.
Also, if I understand right, this should set up IPv6 support. So if that's important to anyone in the community, it's now blocked because we're on endpoint slices.
Yep. And so if you need more than a /8 worth of IP addresses, you are set. IP addresses is /8. Is it 4 million?
2 to the 24, right?
Yeah.
Whatever
man.
that is. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
cool.
you, Kelly.
Thank you, Kelly. I was only off by a factor of 4. Wait, no. Anyways, I don't do math. I give up now. Cool. And on that note, why don't we move into conformance validation? I'm going to move this over to Mike, and we will see where that goes. Oh, yep, there we go. I swear I can push buttons. Take us away, sir.
Hi, let me just share my screen. All right. I hope my screen's visible.
By the way,
Okay.
I'm liking the swag today.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Mayank, and I'm going to be talking about conformance validation, the project that I worked on as a part of Google Summer of Code. So to those of you who do not know what Google Summer of Code is, it's something similar to Community Bridge, like Matej said, except Google funds you for contributing to open source projects. My mentors for this project were Tarun and Ivan, and they've been absolutely awesome. I'm going to be talking about them in a little while. Okay, so who am I? My name is Mayank. I'm from India. I'm a final year student at VIT University, which is also in India, and I'm studying computer science. And if everything goes well, I'll graduate next year. And I love Kubernetes, Golang, cloud systems, and everything related to it. Although I'm not an expert, I just love these technologies. I'm passionate about them, is what I would say. Okay, so in the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to be walking you through conformance validation. I'll try and show a very small demo, and yeah, that's about it. Okay, so before I actually talk a little bit about my project, why don't we talk about Linkerd itself? What is Linkerd? I mean, folks here are obviously aware of what Linkerd is, which is why they're on the call right now. But to anyone who's new over here, Linkerd is an ultralight service mesh for Kubernetes, special emphasis on ultralight. I'll come to that in a while. Now there's a lot of service meshes already. So, but what sets Linkerd apart is that it was built keeping simplicity and user experience in mind. And this kind of lays the foundation for the conformance validation project, right? So I picked this up from the doc, but what it says is that I have my existing infrastructure set up. I have my microservices running, and if I want a service mesh, it should just be as simple as running a command, right? Like I just run linkerd inject and that's it. I have linkerd up and running. No dealing with configuration and stuff like that. You just want it to work. It should just work, right? Simplicity is what we want. So this is why we have conformance validation. So why do we need it? Let me explain the problem a little bit over here. So there is many different ways to set up a Kubernetes cluster, right? We have EKS, we have GKE, DigitalOcean, and you can keep listing like 1,000 managed Kubernetes services, Kubernetes providers. I mean, while that's awesome, the problem with that is that sometimes your Kubernetes cluster's configuration might somewhat conflict with what Linkerd wants. A great example of that would be in GKE. When you want to run Linkerd tap, right? It's not going to work out of the box. You might have to provide some extra RBAC configurations, and this isn't otherwise obvious until you actually dive deep into the docs and actually break your head around it. Or you can always hit people up on Slack and they'll help you out. But what we want to do is we want to streamline this entire process, right? So something like let's say that I have my Kubernetes up and running already. Now I want to know if my cluster is actually ready for Linkerd. So I would just run the conformance validation test, and they would tell me that, hey, if at all anything goes wrong, it would tell me, hey, this is not configured correctly. So you might want to tweak this up a little bit. So that was the entire goal of conformance validation, to make sure that adopting Linkerd into your existing infrastructure is easy. A lot of people might argue that we have the Linkerd check command already, so how is that any different, right? So Linkerd check is awesome. You run it before injecting your pods and after injecting your pods, right? But the problem with that is that those are somewhat static, and we want something more end-to-end and extensive. We want something that actually deploys workloads on your cluster and simulates how Linkerd works, so that it's able to detect problems better. So this is why we have conformance validation. So how do we do it? So these tests are intended to be run with Sonobuoy. Sonobuoy is this really amazing tool developed by VMware Tanzu. It basically makes it easy to run conformance tests inside your cluster. So it was traditionally, initially it was used for running the Kubernetes conformance tests. But they later extended support for having plugins, which means you could just create your own plugins and you could run your own conformance tests inside of Kubernetes. So we kind of leverage this model and we use this to run our conformance tests using Sonobuoy. So let me just show you a very quick demo of how these things work. So do I have a Kubernetes cluster running? I think so. Yeah. So I have a local Kubernetes cluster running right now on Docker desktop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and run the conformance test. So as a user, you are primarily you're mainly concerned with the config file, right? So the main responsibility of the config file is to provide configurations for your test. It's got all sorts of stuff like the Linkerd version, control plane flags, add-ons, and test specific configuration. Like if I want to skip something, if I want to delete the resources after testing and stuff like that. So you have the config file, and if you want to use this config file, what you do is you mount it as a config map onto your Kubernetes cluster under the Sonobuoy namespace. But this is completely optional. If you don't provide any config at all, then it just uses the default values for your tests. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm just going to use the default values for now because I don't want to deal with config maps and stuff in this demo right now. And the second thing that you might want to be concerned with is the plugin file itself. You wouldn't usually change stuff around in here except the image itself. So this is the Docker image that holds our conformance test. I'm using a local version right now, the one that I built for myself for this demo. So yeah, that's it. You have these two items, and then you just run this command Sonobuoy run, and that's it. Oh my bad, did I do anything wrong? That's unexpected. I think I have. Okay, my bad. So I think it's because I already have these things up and running right now. But you essentially just run this command, and And that's it. You get a Sonobuoy namespace and it pulls up a pod and runs all your tests and does all the magic for you. These tests would ideally take like an hour or something to run, but yeah, this didn't work out right now, and I also wasn't planning on waiting for an hour, so I'll just quickly skip through and show you what it looks like after you've run the tests, right? So after you run the tests, you get a results file, something like this. It gives you a nice report about the stuff that was going on in your cluster. It tells you that this test passed, and I think something even failed over here. Yeah, I think yeah, this test over here failed, and it tells me that this is the reason why it failed. I'm not really sure why it failed, but yeah, at least it tells me why it failed. So yeah, it's pretty neat for that matter. And then so that's how you use it with Sonobuoy. Pretty easy. It's very straightforward. And so yeah, let me talk a little bit about the current state of the project and how you would add new tests. So right now we have a couple of tests up and running already. These are some of them. We have the lifecycle control plane lifecycle ready. That is, it checks if Linkerd can install, uninstall, and stuff like that. We have Linkerd tap, edges ingress, some useful CLI operations, and obviously the proxy injector. So if you were to add a new test, what you would do is you would first create a separate package for it in the specs folder, and this would have mainly two files, that is a test.go and specs.go. So the specs.go is actually what defines what your entire test is going to be looking like. It has this main function, the entry function, which looks like this, and you use Ginkgo to write down the test cases. It has this callback, which actually holds the testing logic and the definition of what the test needs to do. So the test.go is where all the testing logic sits. And we use Ginkgo and Go Omega for all of this because it's pretty neat. It's easy to organize and it's readable, and writing tests becomes very easy with Ginkgo and Go Omega, especially the assertions. They look pretty neat to me. So yeah, that's there. And once you have your tests running, all you have to do is go to specs.go and wire it up. You just include them over here, something like this, and that's it. You have a test case up and running for conformance validation. So if any, I mean, I wouldn't really recommend to any new contributors right now to contribute, because a lot of this is still an experimental phase where we're still seeing how we can migrate the existing integration test into conformance validation, so that the entire process is streamlined. And we're also right now discussing about the test that we want to bring into this repository. Right now we have the service, the retries and timeouts waiting to get merged. Once that's done, we will have retries and timeouts as well for conformance validation. And then I think, yeah, that's about it. We also have this nice little documentation if you want to quickly run through and run the conformance test on your Kubernetes clusters. It's pretty cool, right? So that's there. And oops, my bad. Yeah, I think that's pretty much about it. These are some important links. I'm going to drop the link to this PPT so that you can find some useful resources, like link to the project, the original RFC, and this blog post that I wrote about my GSOC journey with Linkerd. And you can always feel free to reach out to me. I stay in India, so I am usually in the IST time zone. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I just want to conclude by saying that my GSOC journey had been absolutely wonderful. Tarun and Ivan have been really great mentors. I've learned so much out of them. I've learned so much from the Linkerd community itself. Some of those things are going to be first how to communicate effectively, and then there is how to read and write code properly, and the importance of documentation, importance of keeping things simple as much as you can. That's one thing that I've learned from Linkerd, is that you do not want to complicate things a lot. You want to keep it as simple as you can. Only then, will users actually be inclined towards using it. So user experience is important. I've learned that, and yeah, apart from that, I've learned that Linkerd is awesome, and yeah, actually, I really enjoyed working with Tarun and Ivan a lot. Tarun is actually still my mentor. He still gives me advice related to technology, and he's always up for chatting with me for any technology at all, and gives me really cool advice. So yeah, that's it. My journey has been awesome. Thanks a lot to the community for giving me this really wonderful opportunity. That's it. Bye bye.
No, I'm not letting you go. No. Thank you so much. I have been wanting conformance validation for years. It is amazing that we finally got it. Every time Check can't test something like the GKE private cluster things, it is one of those where I wish that I had a command to give folks, and now I do, and it's awesome. And I cannot understate how important this is going to be for the project moving forward for testing, because now we can have end users write replication steps for us, and it ends up going into the code. And so those crazy one-off weird issues that you always struggle with, we now have a way to get that tested and ready to go in the code. And it's something that gets tested on every release, which is just absolutely fantastic. I'm so excited by it. But I've got the same question for you that I had for Matej. What's next? What didn't get done that would make this even more awesome?
I think we were planning on looking into how we would get multi-cluster tests up and running for conformance tests. But that would be somewhat challenging, and that is because we don't really know if Sonobuoy supports multi-cluster for now. So that would be a nice thing to work on, multi-cluster. And apart from that, it would also be pretty exciting to see how we can, kind of streamline this entire process of getting existing integration tests into the conformance validation repo. Because right now I see that there is some overlap in some aspects. The integration tests are not written using Ginkgo or anything, but the conformance tests are. So yeah, I think these things would be really cool to work on.
That's awesome. And Ginkgo is the standard testing library for Kubernetes, right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I think all of the tests on the upstream Kubernetes repos also written using Ginkgo. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
So it's kind of modernizing our integration testing infrastructure along with moving it into the conformance testing stuff. Super cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
That was fantastic.
Thank you.
We really appreciate the work. It's so awesome. The mentoring has been amazing. I got more out of it than I ever expected. Working with y'all has been absolutely fantastic.
Thank you so much.
You bet. Charles, do you want to lead us through Linkerd Heroes? We didn't run out of time this week.
Good. Yes, I was sad that we didn't get to talk about our Linkerd Heroes last week. So let's see. This week, well, there's so many people that I think have made some really good contributions. Let's see. I guess, I've been really happy with some of the conversations that Tarun has been talking about around some of the Helm charts and just the really thoughtful processes that he's had. But I really have to say that today, without a doubt, 100% my choice for Linkerd Hero is Ivan, because he's been contributing to Linkerd for so long, and he's been great to work with. And I guess maybe this is a bit of a spoiler, but he'll be moving on to something different, and that's great. We wish him the best of luck. I hope that he remains part of the community. But man, it's he's been a pleasure to work with, and it has been much like we just talked about these two programs, the GSOC program and the Community Bridge, and we had some very appreciative folks who were involved in that program, and I want to extend my appreciation to Ivan. I'm not a student. I guess you might call me a student of Linkerd, but I learned a ton from him, continue to learn from him, and I think if there's any takeaway, what makes him a hero is he continues to be a mentor to people who, like me, who aren't students, and he continues to offer his knowledge to the community. So yeah, that's my pick.
I'm going to have to +1 that one. For those folks who don't know, Ivan is actually the person who gets the community meetings to be a community meeting. I just am the somewhat ugly face that you all have to listen to on a regular basis. he's the one who does all the really important work there, and it's fantastic. I'm going to definitely miss him, even though he's going to have fun without us, I'm sure. Oliver, tell us who your nomination is.
Man, I don't remember who I nominated last time, but I'm going to nominate Liza this time. She's been doing live streams, kind of a deep proxy walkthroughs and writing blog posts and really helping the community get some more insight into the work we're doing on the proxy, which is kind of in a black box to a lot of folks. So I'm really thrilled that we're getting more of that exposed to y'all. And if that's an interesting area, if you're looking for a Rust project to go learn in, it's a great place to start, and Eliza's a great Sherpa into the proxy. So I hope she keeps up good work. And also, yeah, I want to echo, I think all the summer code students and Mate did excellent work this summer and really had to knock down a whole lot of challenges on their own. As great as the mentors are, there's a lot of decisions that have to get made and pushed through, and they were really good about not getting blocked and keeping that up. And Ivan and Thomas and Alex were all a big part of that process too. So just great work from the community. I'm thrilled about it.
Awesome. Does anyone else want to do a nomination for Linkerd Heroes? I think this is a great set. Actually, on the Eliza one, I will mention Tarun was chatting with me earlier in the week about Eliza's latest live stream and said that he was learning all kinds of interesting ways for how the proxy actually worked. And so even if you're not interested in Rust or anything else, Eliza's live streams are fantastic for tuning in and figuring out how Linkerd works in the nitty-gritty details, which I would recommend if you are interested in getting a better picture of how all the pieces fit together.
Also, I want to shout out Alejandro, who's not here, who like the day after GitHub Container Registry was actually usable for us, he got that all working. We have our ARM builds going there, and we're moving a lot of our public image hosting over to GitHub now, which is free, which is better.
Yep, definitely. Cool, that's a great one to call out as well.
I'm gonna give a shout out to Tarun for the really fast turnaround for fixing that. I think it's Go 1.15 issue where they change they deprecate the TLS package to no longer support common name, and then now the TLDR is Linkerd didn't work on Kubernetes 1.19 because they switched over to Go 1.15. Tarun saw the issue and he jumped on it. I think within hours, he had a PR for that. So thumbs up to Tarun and tacos to Tarun for that.
And PSA, Linkerd does not work. Linkerd stable does not work on Kubernetes 1.19. So please use an edge if you're having issues there, and reach out to Tarun and ask him for all of the nitty-gritty details. It is a masterclass in unintended consequences.
It turns out the feature was deprecated in the RFC 20 years ago, and Go decided to upgrade and surprised everyone. So.
Yep, unintended consequences. Awesome. Okay, now for our last section, the most important. Someone please stump Oliver. Ask us any of your questions, all of them.
I'm very easy to stump, so this shouldn't be hard.
I feel like asking you about riding bicycles, but
I have a flat tire, and I got a new bike, and then the third time I rode it, I got a flat tire. So I'm waiting to get a tire pump.
The first time I moved to San Francisco, I think I got a flat tire every time I rode my bicycle, and I invested in some insanely heavy duty tires, and I stopped getting flats. But I don't understand how normal people ride normal bikes in normal places without the heavy duty tires.
Oh yeah, right. Tarun called out, not a question, but that the folks at Spotify are having a hack week, in a week or two. And they're looking at adding Linkerd plugins to Backstage, which is one of the newest CNCF projects. So that's another good place to go get involved if you're looking in the community.
I am not seeing any questions except about anti-puncture tires. Oh, here we go.
Oh, that's a good question. Can we use multi-cluster to specifically target one instance of a stateful set in a specific cluster? Not today. I think that'd be a really good issue. An issue to open up though. We're working, as I said, we're going to work on the TCP multi-cluster next, and that's a good place to revisit if there's any discovery changes we want to make there. I think it'd be around addressing. So we just need to figure out how to replicate the names across clusters, basically, and whether that's on a service or what. But
or
really
to
good
be more
feature
specific, the wording there is for multi-cluster to support headless services.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. These headless services in general. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for another fantastic community meeting. We'll be anxiously awaiting seeing all of your faces again next month when we kick this off again. So have a fantastic rest of your day and enjoy your Linkerd fun and games.